Business Focus with Kudzi Sharara on the Champions League Breakfast.
Good morning and welcome to Business Focus. It's 19 minutes before 8 a.m. We've got Kudzi Sharara as always to discuss a lot of what's happening in the world of business. Good morning to you, Kudzi. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Tinashe. Good morning, Shumba. Good morning, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much. So, Kudzi, let's start off by looking at inflation numbers and what it means to business and individuals. These numbers were released on Friday, I think.
Yes, inflation numbers came out on Friday, released by ZIMSTAT. And it seems like prices are not going up. Yeah, because when you look at month-on-month inflation, so that's between June and May, the prices remained flat. So it was like 0.00%, which means that between May and June, ZIMSTAT is telling us that prices did not go up. That's in ZIG. Remember that we now have three types of inflation: the ZIG inflation, Zimbabwe gold inflation, and then we also have the US dollar inflation, and the one that is weighted, which is the blended inflation. So in terms of the ZIG inflation, ZIMSTAT is telling us that prices remained flat. Remember the previous month in May, prices had actually gone down by 2.4%. Now they're telling us that prices remained steady during that period, which I think is it's a good thing. Well, for some, because the economy is made up of different people. So when you look at individuals, I'm sure everybody can be happy if prices don't go up, because you can actually plan your things knowing that if I earn my ZIG today, I can keep it for a month and I'll still be able to buy the same thing, which is something totally different from what was happening in the past, where if you earn your money today and you try and spend it next week, the prices would have gone up by several times. But now they according to ZIMSTAT.
You're saying that the prices according to ZIMSTAT have not changed?
Yes, on average.
On
remember.
average.
Yes.
What is the current rate, the ZIG rate?
That's what I'm saying. You mean the exchange rate? Or
exchange rate, yes.
Most outlets are using 14.5, or even some that are using 19 anyway. There are some who are using 19, some 16.
And which one is the official one?
The official one is about 13.58, but businesses are allowed to use what the exchange rate at which they would have bought their foreign currency. And I was in one major retail outlet yesterday, and the rate was 14.5. That was the rate.
So 10% trading margin.
No, it's not about 10% trading margin. They are allowed to use an exchange rate which they would have bought foreign currency.
Foreign currency ikupi?
Banks. Kuma banks.
Heavy.
Yes.
Okay. So in nezo ndaitopopota ndatengeserwa kauku kangu Shumba keke rate bva vanditi 1490 ndikati ndoziya 1350 amuda kundibira tubatya rights mfana kuzocalculate ndozvokutaurwa nakudzi kuti hayi vari right.
Yeah, 1490. Yeah, but you find that different outlets are using different rates. But the bottom line is, even when outlets that are still using, let's say 19, when you look at, they haven't changed according to ZIMSTAT. When then they do, because ZIMSTAT only look at price, the changes in prices. They don't look at the exchange rate that you are using. They use the changes in prices. And from what they're telling us, that ZIG inflation was 0.0%. They're telling us that prices in whatever outlets that they went the previous month, and they went back this in June, between the 12th and the 18th of June. That's when they were doing their survey. They are saying prices remained flat, that's why there's that 0.0%. And I think when they do the breakdown, they are telling us that food and non-alcoholic beverages inflation was actually a negative 0.4% for food and other beverages that are not alcohol. The inflation was at 0.4%. The previous month it was actually 5.2%. So inflation, but now it's a negative 0.4%. So prices actually came off on average of food and beverages. Prices came off, and then toenda ku US dollar inflation, Tinashe. They're telling us that prices in US dollars on average, they actually came off because the month-on-month inflation was at 0.3%. 0.3%. That's the month-on-month inflation. But when you go to the widely used year-on-year inflation, there was actually a slight increase in prices. Now you're comparing June this year and June last year. There was prices went up by an average 3.8% when you compare June last year and June this year. And again, you can see that it shows that our inflation has relatively remained below 5% for US dollars. This is on average. Yes, you can see, for example, if you look at US dollar inflation, you have got your food and beverages, which are not alcohol, inflation, negative 0.7%. But when you then go to non-food inflation or non-food inflation, it's a negative 0.1%. So you can see the difference in price changes. But overall, we are saying prices of goods and services in Zimbabwe have remained relatively steady. Now to come to your question, Tinashe, where you're saying, what does it mean for me when prices are not going up, when inflation is steady or flat as it were? What does it mean? And it means that if the inflation is sort of like your negative inflation, it means that your purchasing power is increased. If it's 0.0, it means your purchasing power has remained the same, considering that if your income has remained the same. But if your income has gone up, you actually can now buy more with your money. So that's one thing. And then you look at when prices are coming off, when you've got negative inflation, as we are seeing. When you've got negative inflation, as we are seeing in some aspects, it means that it discourages spending, Tinashe, when prices are in the negative, are coming off. Because what you do is, okay, last month chingwa chaita $1, now chakunzi 90 cents, so let me delay buying it now. Maybe chingwa is a bad example because you buy it every day. Let's say, for example, it's a stove. You say this stove was $100 last month. This month is now $90. You might decide to say, reganibomira kutenga. Ndozotenga next month, pango inenge stove inenge ya $80, right? So it discourages spending, and it becomes a vicious cycle now where people are saying, let me delay again, because they are seeing prices coming off, so they will delay purchasing. But at the end of the day, someone is producing these products and not selling, because Tinashe, the consumer, is delaying making a purchase. So the producer of these products will also now be stuck with products that they've produced but are not selling. They might end up saying, no, we cannot continue to produce. Let's stop production of some of these things, or let's reduce production of some of these things. At the end of the day, they might tell their workers, now we don't need more of you. Maybe we need to let some of you go. So that is the challenge with prices coming off. Yet not deflation. When you are now getting continuous negative prices, it becomes deflation, and it's not good for the economy. Like I said, it discourages spending. It also results in wage stagnation, Tinashe. If you have got negative inflation, you cannot go to your employer and say, "Anduda wage increase or salary increase." But why? Because why should we increase your wages and salaries? So it results in wage stagnation, which is, again, I'm sure a lot of people will not be happy with that scenario. And then for businesses, the good thing about when prices are coming off, it means lower production costs. Because if you were buying, let's say, fuel at a certain price, and the price is now lower, it means your production costs are also coming off. If you're buying your raw materials at 10 and now you can buy them at 9, it means also your production costs have actually come down. So it's a good thing for business when you've got negative inflation. However, there are also challenges when you've got negative inflation. Decreased demand, like I highlighted earlier, to say people who suspend spending, anticipating prices to further go down. So it will result in decreased demand, and decreased demand will also result in lower production, and then profit decline as well. If your prices are coming off, and yet maybe your costs are steady, it means your profit margins are also coming off. So that's the thing about inflation.
But Kudzi, as much as we're looking at the statistics from ZIMSTAT, maybe this is a question that we'll pose out to our listeners. Are the prices stagnant or going low in reality out there in the shops?
Out there in the shop. I'll let the listeners reply because you know we shop in different areas.
Yeah.
Over the weekend I was in Maybelline and kunetuma anonzo matak shop ek Maybelline. Because my daughter they'd come from their boarding school. They were doing some girl guide stuff in Maybelline at Alfred Bait. So we went to the smaller shops that are there, the so-called tax shops. And the prices that I saw in those tax shops in Maybelline and the prices that I see, for example, in Warren Park, they are different. Things are a little bit more
higher,
expensive.
lower,
They're expensive in Maybelline than they are in Warren Park.
Yeah.
You see, so someone in Maybelline maybe has to some prices as compared to someone who cannot Warren Park or Zaraseko or Glenview. So it also depends on where you are. So the way you feel inflation, you will no gara. The way I feel inflation, it might be different as well. That's why you're not ZIMSTAT yakutoita my inflation could blow inflation iri papi.
Okay.
Vanotarisana nzvimbo inflation could be.
Maybe you can also help us on our WhatsApp platform. Go to areas are the prices coming off in your area? Let's hear from you. Are they stagnant, coming off? And 0719 100 404. I've got a question here from one of our listeners who says, just checking with Kudzi if there's any direction from Zimra on USD invoices paid in ZIG by government.
No, I haven't got it. I remember we sent. Yeah, they haven't sent the response. I'll follow up today again with the guys at Zimra.
Okay, thank you so much, Kelvin. We'll hear from Kudzi as soon as he gets the response. But to Kudzi, let's now look at trade. What's happening to our exports and our imports as a country?
I think in terms of, it's just that when it comes to exports and imports, some of these things are seasonal. But when you compare our exports for the month of May, because they've got a month delay. So the numbers that we have are for May. You can actually see that our exports grew by 13.5%, which is a good thing. We exported more than we did in April. So we exported goods worth about $583 million worth of goods, and then which is up from 513 in April. But then when it comes to imports, we continue to see an increase in what we import, Tinashe. Our import bill was 734 million versus 711 million the previous month. So there was a 3.1% increase. At least the increase in imports is lower than the increase in exports, which I think is a trend that we would want to see when we continue to grow our exports, but try as much as we can to minimize our imports. And that resulted in a lower trade deficit than the previous month. So our trade deficit, which is 151 million, was lower than the previous deficit of 198 million. What it means there is that the gap of the money that we require for us to be able to import, we are exporting lower than our imports, so we need to fill that gap. And I think that gap is being filled by from my NGOs who spend here, also from remittances that we get from the diaspora. That comes then and fill this gap of 151 million, because we exported we exported 583 million, but imported 734 million. So it means that there is that trade deficit, which is then fueled by if we didn't have remittances, we might have to borrow some foreign currency, or as it were, we get some funding from NGOs who are funding different projects, but the money comes in US dollars, and then it help us to import some of our products. But I think our remittances can easily fill that gap. But our biggest, maybe we always highlight this, Tinashe, to say of our imports, what is it that we can reduce? So our biggest imports are in fuels, where we import 24.8% of that 734 million that we spoke about. 24.8% is importation of fuels. At the moment, maybe kana mzarabani yazotanga kufaya some years, maybe we will get some,
or maybe
some
number
there.
of vehicles being imported.
Exactly, reduce a number of vehicles being imported, or tikatanga kuimport my hybrid or my electronic vehicles. Then we can reduce the amount of fuel that that we import. But it shows, number 4 pamazvinhu zvatino importa imota at 8.1%. So import a lot. So number 1 is fuel. Number 2 is machinery and mechanical appliances. Number 3 is cereals. I think cereals it went up a bit. And then number 4 is vehicles.
So
to import a motor.
We are still in a society where we regard a vehicle as an asset.
It could be a reason, but it's also gives you convenience. Remember, when you go to these other countries, Dubai, the UK, people just use their trains, trams,
or bicycles.
Or bicycles. Yeah, to some extent bicycles. And they can easily commute. But here in Zimbabwe, where is the public transport system? Even buses, we don't have reliable and well-maintained buses. We're actually risking our lives in those using those buses because they are past their sell by date, or they are not roadworthy, and they are not roadworthy. And mamwe acho because arutoziva kuti ndikamhanya kusvika kwaMutare tokunodzoka ndikata imwe trip foot. That's why we are seeing all these accidents that are happening.
There's a lot of competition.
There's a lot of competition, and so that's a challenge that we are seeing. And if we had an efficient public transport system, maybe there's no need for us to have all these vehicles that we have, or we'll just park them, which means we reduce our fuel bill. Some trams, trains, and it. So I think it's an area that we need to focus on, bring in investors and help us there. And then so that's what we import. I think we can reduce some of those cereals. If we can, we have 10,000 water bodies in Zimbabwe. If we can utilize all of them, maybe we don't need to import these cereals that we're importing in form of grain. So those are some of the things that we are importing.
All right, so there's a question on WhatsApp, 3 minutes to go now. Answer Naikudzi, as an informal trader, what rate should I use when I buy my goods from these big wholesalers? We said out the name, but let's pay it out.
Yes,
at a rate of 14.90. And Naikudzi, as an informal trader, what rate should I use when I buy my goods from these big retailers or wholesalers at a rate of 14.9?
I think you can use the same rate. Chawakuisa profit margin, anditi. Wakuisa profit margin. Okay, for example, wanotenga iwewe zvinhu zvinoita $10 using a rate ye 14.90 anditi. Iwewe markup yako is 10%. So wakuti $11 because waisa $10 yako waisa markup yako ye 10% anditi. So wakuti $11 times 14.90.
Okay.
So you can use the same rate for your products. But chaunozoisa kuisa ka profit margin kako kuti okay, zvinhu zvandatenga zviri worth $10. So $10 plus my markup ye 10%, ndakufana kutengesa at $11. And then kana amumazigi ndakuchishandisa nerate ye 14.9 yandatengawo nayo.
But apa chiri kunyanya chandiri kufunga chiri kangonetsa ndeyekuti this is an informal trader. How are you getting kwaari kuwana mari US acho ari kumaona kupi? I-black market iri kuti kubengi.
Aiwa uyo anotomboita zvema-US aenda akanotenga nemaziga ake kuna former wholesaler akanzi tengetirwa rate yenhingirikini ye 14.90. Yes, there's that possibility and when you are doing shopping you're actually calculating it. Okay, is it worth kuti ndiende notenga kuna nhinga ari pastreet at 19 ndozodzoka notenga mushop? You will find kuti there is no need yekuti utomboenda ikoko, even though mushop muri slightly up at 14.5, or even the US dollar price is slightly up than kumatax shop. Let's say kumatax shop it's $4, mushop it's $4.50. You'd rather buy mushop machiri utengeswa at $4.50 US because ulizonoshandisa rate re 14.90. But kuti utenge $4.50 kuparallel market uchaitenga at 19. So it's expensive for you. Anyway, so I'm just getting a message from one of the Zimura
okay, let's do quickly because
top guys there saying that I thought someone reached out. We'll share today. My apologies once again. So it's a Zimura official. So that
we'll
answer
get the response definitely tomorrow.
We'll get it tomorrow.
All right, Coach, would have wanted to go more deeper in the world of business, but time do pay for today. We discuss more tomorrow. And so to Kelvin, who has been asking that question, definitely we'll get a response from Zimra later on today for tomorrow. Thank you so much, Kudzi, for today.
Thank you, Tina.